Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our State of the Nation breakfast. I'm Stephen Grootes. We'll be hearing from Justice Malala and Clem Sunter this morning. Thanks so much for coming in so early. I know we'll have an exciting and enlightening breakfast, and while I may be playing the role of Beleke and Beta, I promise not to throw anyone out this morning. I can also tell you that our breakfast discussion is going to be less predictable than your average Democratic Alliance leadership election. We know also, of course, that things in our country are changing very quickly. If you go back to, say, January, the EFF had yet to be thrown out of Parliament. Jacob Zuma hadn't spoken about Nkandla. Load shedding was then a distant memory. It's now back with us, of course. And Helen Zille was the leader of the DA. That was all a while ago. We'll be discussing all of that this morning. I've always thought that you can probably put our political discussion into just several questions. They are, would the DA ever win an election? Would the ANC give up power peacefully? What happens when Jacob Zuma leaves the post of leader of the ANC in just 2.5 years' time now? Why is that conference in eThekwini, the Durban conference of the ANC, so important? And why does it keep collapsing? And then I think perhaps the more fundamental question is what's going to happen to our courts and our Chapter 9 institutions over the next few years. So all of this will be up for discussion at our State of the Nation breakfast this morning. Justice Malala, I'm sure you all know.
What a country, it's gorgeous to live here. What happened afterwards? We had a new finance minister in 1995. His name is Trevor Manuel. And when he came in, South Africa's debt to GDP ratio was 50%. And people were saying, there's no money here. And you remember what happened when Trevor Manuel became finance minister. The rand plummeted, and people said, oh, this guy, former communist, how can he run the economy? Think about 2008 and 2009 when there was a change of government, and people were saying, we don't care. Get rid of Thabo Mbeki if you like, but keep Trevor Manuel there. And they kept him there. And everyone was happy. The debt to GDP ratio had been pushed down to nearly half, more than just over half of what it used to be in 1995. That's how we go from these one extreme to exactly the other in South Africa. To the Institute of Race Relations a week and a half ago, 67% of people between 15 and 24 are unemployed. 67%. It means this morning, as all of us came out to be here and go on to the work that we do every day, 67% of young people are either saying, I'll go out and look for a job, I'll go out and attempt to find one, or I'm just going to sit here and not do anything. Young women, 75% unemployment. 29% of the people in our prisons are young people between 14 and 25. Further, people are becoming disillusioned with the system. Only 31% of those 18, 19-year-olds are registered to vote. What are they saying to us? They're saying, I don't trust your political system to actually do anything for me. If you think about the figures that we bandied about in the election last year, there are 35 million people in South Africa who are eligible to vote. South Africa, it's always hard, and we find it hard, and we ask for advice and so forth. But it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. It means that we are at a point in our history where we need to work a little bit harder to turn things around. I continue to believe that South Africa is a buy, and my faith is based on the fact that we have people like Thuli Madonsela who every day show us what leadership is, what standing up for what is right is. And with people like this in South Africa, I don't think it's a sell at all. So I'm still very optimistic despite some of the scenarios I have painted. Thank you very much.
One of the more interesting questions, and everyone talks about the contestants, the people who could take over from President Jacob Zuma in the ANC. We hear the same three names all the time. In Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, we hear Cyril Ramaphosa, and then
for your business. When the book first came out, it wasn't that successful because books on scenario planning never are. But we had one event which really propelled it into the bestsellers, and that was 9/11. because in a letter we published in the book, we said to George Bush that one of his extreme futures that he might face was a massive terrorist strike on an American city. And we said that 3 months before it actually happened in September. But we didn't get it right. We didn't have planes flying into buildings. If we had, I wouldn't be here. We talked of somebody planting a nuclear device in an American city. We talked of nuclear terrorism in the letter. But what we really got right were the two flags that indicated that this was probably his most likely threat. Number one was the growing confrontation between the major religions of the world, which really started in the late 80s, particularly in Saudi Arabia, and then intensified during the 1990s. And obviously then led to an event like 9/11. But the second flag was the two attacks on American embassies in Africa in 1998, one in Tanzania and one in Kenya, which we felt was a dress rehearsal for the real thing in America. So notice another difference between flags. The first one was a trend which intensified. The second one was an event that happened, which we felt was a signal for something big in America. And we've always thought that if the security agencies had used our system of flags, they might have reperceived some of the genuine flags that they were getting, such as the young lady who went to her boss in the FBI on 6 occasions and said, "Boss, there's a flying school down the road where Arabs are learning to take off but not land." Big clue. But it was ignored on the grounds that Arabs were too incompetent to attack Americans on American soil. And if they'd had identified this flag in the context of our more generic flags, they may well have actually closed the whole operation down, because 2 of the suicide pilots went to that school.